Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode, wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on. As always, thank you guys so much for the support, the kind messages, all the things that you've left and been sending the show and been sending through email and everything. Keep those coming. Thanks a lot. And thank you for joining us here for this episode. And I like this one for a few reasons. And as I mentioned before we started recording, I do always find it fascinating the multiple roles that assistants can play and how each assistant has kind of their own responsibility. And I know in some programs, assistants are given very little to do, and in others, they're given a lot of responsibility to do. And I think what I would like to get out of this conversation, for those of you who are listening, what I hope you get out of this is, if you are an assistant, to be thinking about, maybe multiple responsibilities, maybe you want to start undertaking and things you can do. And if you're a head coach, maybe some ideas about delegation and ways to kind of incorporate your assistants and, maybe get some new ideas or some new strategies about how to incorporate your assistants in the most effective manner possible. So let's jump right into it and talk about this topic of handling multiple roles as an assistant. My guest today, very happy that he was able to spend some time to come on and talk to us today. Coach Nate Kennard is here. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for the invite, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, Coach, let's go ahead and get started with your journey, your basketball journey. Where is the game taking you? Where's your coaching journey taking you? And where is it that you're currently at right now?
Awesome. Yeah, I was my first love as far as sports was baseball, and it was something I played outside and all the time growing up as a kid, and wanted to play little league baseball. And it seemed like my year had come to actually go and play for the league there in our town. And for some reason, we missed the tryout date. And when we missed the tryout date, of course, I was devastated. My dad, told me, he said, "Hey, our school, I went to a small private Christian school at the time, and he said, we've got a basketball team. Why don't you play basketball?" Like I said, it wasn't my first love, and I was kind of an undersized kid, and so baseball was where I wanted to go. But it focused my attention to basketball, and I started working on basketball. I got a goal outside, started playing. I played starting in my 5th grade year. All the way through 12th grade at the same school. Like I said, I was at a small private Christian school. And for most of my career, I was very undersized and, really had to work very hard for anything I got on the basketball court. I had to study the game. I had to know the game. And I think that was kind of the beginning for me, is because I really had to work so hard in everything I did. And I remember having some pretty awesome coaches through the way of knowing that I wasn't very skilled at the time, but giving me chances. And so whenever I got into middle school, I really started loving the game and started becoming a lot more knowledgeable. And as I got into high school and finally started growing and getting a little bit bigger, that's when it really set in. And of course, I would be doing an injustice if I didn't mention the people that were my coaches whenever I was coming through the ranks as a player. I had a guy that coached me, Coach Kennard. He coached me from my 7th through 10th grade year, and in middle school, and then again in high school, my first 2 years in high school. And really, those development years really helped me to get to a skill set where I could be on the floor, I could start, I could get some playing time. And just, the hunger that I had, I was able to see some results from the hard work that I was putting in. And so had him for those years, had a guy named Coach Grazer my junior year, a guy that had played at a high level. He played at Auburn for a year before he transferred to a lower level college to get some more playing time and stuff. But got some really good coaching from him. And then my senior year, I really came into my own my junior and senior year and did pretty well as a two guard. But my senior year, I had to play the one, which changed my game quite a bit. But I actually scored more and did more just because I got to learn a different position and play. And was coached by a guy that I got a tremendous amount of respect for, Coach Cabrera. He was going to Tennessee Tech, which is the university really close to where I live now. And he was kind of getting his master's and getting ready to get into the coaching world, and got to coach us for a year. And he, really, even though we weren't very good, really took the time to pour into. And I saw this guy when he left us and into when I'll talk about my coaching career in a little bit. But as I got into my coaching career, this guy became an assistant for a long time. And now he's a head coach, but was an assistant for a long time and was a pretty dadgum good one, and really got to see him and the way he handled his road. But he coached me my senior year. I was really excited. I got noticed a little bit between my 10th and 12th grade years. We were able to go to our league state tournament and got a little bit of exposure from some small universities that expressed interest in me. Did get recruited by a small NCCAA school and was planning on going. My senior year in high school, was planning on going, was excited about it. As I was planning to go and play college ball that year, I was starting to read a lot of books by coaches, because I knew that was something I would eventually like to get into. Really started following Coach K from Duke and reading a lot about him and his journey. And that year, my senior year, back in, I'm going to date myself here, but back in 1999, I got to see their run come a little short in the championship game against UConn that year, and got to see how he handled not just winning and success, but also losing on a big stage. And the things that, I got to read about him, and just really, really gave me a desire to coach. But at that time, I was really focused on playing and playing at the next level. I found out the summer between my senior year in high school, after I graduated, and my freshman year in college, found out that I was going to expect my oldest son. So, which was some really great news, but had to stay at home, had to get a full-time job, had to go to community college, all those kind of things. And so it really made coaching what my passion was going to be. I knew my playing days were over. I wanted to continue basketball, love it. There's things you can learn from it that you can teach young men about, that I learned about whenever I was in high school, and wanted to pass that on. So really wanted to get into that. And so I did a lot of volunteering at first at an early age, 20, 21. I'm volunteering for little junior pro teams, any kind of AAU team that needed a coach. I'm volunteering for that. And then I got lucky enough that I had some people watch some of the AAU games that I was coaching, and came to me after and said, "Hey, there's a middle school in the county that I lived in. We're looking for some coaches. We just passed the rule that you don't have to be a teacher to coach." And at that time, I only had a couple years in college so I wasn't a teacher yet. I didn't have my degree. And I was like, "Wow, I can coach right now." "Yeah, you can. We're going to bring you in for an interview." And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to coach." And so I started coaching middle school when I was 22, almost 23 years old. And I was able to coach for 7 years. And so I kind of just got thrown into the fire.
Sure.
I wasn't, didn't have a lot of experience, was a head coach at an early age. And, with the underdog mentality as a player, really at the school I was at, it fit in really well. And they weren't expected to win. They, didn't really have a good history of winning, had never won any kind of championship in 50 plus years in that county. And I was able to take, some hungry kids and make them believe and work really hard. And in a few years, won a championship, made it to another one, just had a really good time coaching. At that time, I was still working in retail and slowly getting through school with working full time and coaching too. And so I was really enjoying myself coaching. It's something that I love to do. And it was at the middle school level, which I love because it's so pure of a level
Sure.
of coaching. And so as I got in about year 7, I knew I wanted to get into school a little more and finish my degree so I could start teaching. That was my passion, was to teach and coach, and that be my profession. It would open up more time to coach as well if I'm already at the school. And so I stepped away, and that didn't last very long because the very next season I had the local high school coach ask if I would be the assistant, and I was like, if I'm the assistant, it's a step up because I'm going to high school. That would be awesome. It's where I want to be anyway. But it will allow me to not be the main guy, where I can really focus in and try to get back into school. And so I took it and so I'm at the high school level, assistant role. Crazy things happen within the first 9 games. There was a coaching change in that first
Wow.
year. Some crazy things happened, and the guy who took over was a guy that I coached against in middle school, and so we had known each other a little bit. He asked if I would stay on staff, to help the transition. He kind of got thrown into it just to kind of finish the year out, and so we started talking, and we had a lot in common, and it got really exciting because a lot of things mirrored up, and so.
That's
That's the
nice.
guy that I've actually kind of been with for the last 13 years at the same school, being the assistant coach. We've kind of tag team and, had a blast. I was able to finally finish up my degree at age 34 and get into the high school teaching as well as coaching. And so, like, this past year has been my 13th year as an assistant coach at the high school level. I've, helped in AAU. I've been a head coach in AAU. I've, done middle school. I've been assistants in, different settings. But this has been a true blessing for me. We are a high school in AAA. There's 4 different classes, and we're in AAA in Tennessee. And we, out of the 13 seasons, we've made the Final Four twice, the Elite Eight twice, 3 Sweet 16 finishes, if you want to call it that. A lot of regional berths and stuff. So we've had a lot of success and blessed with a lot of really good players. And I've had a blast, and I'm so glad that even though that life gives you bumps, that I had, wanting to play at the next level.
Hmm.
One of the things that it really did was open up a pathway into coaching, and it's just so rewarding. It's so rewarding, and it's so awesome to see kids take things that you can help them with and apply them to their game, and not just their game, but their lives down the road.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
and to do that and to see that is the greatest thing ever. So I'm very fortunate.
And that's really cool that you've had the ability to stick with in one spot, working under one coach for as long as you have. I mean, there's coaches who run through different assistants, it seems like every single year. But for you to be in a spot where you've been with somebody for as long as you have, like, I imagine you two must be, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, almost on the same wavelength, or know what each other is thinking and can finish each other's sentences at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Coach, I know a quote that means a lot to you is the quote, "Wherever you are, make it better." What does that mean to you, and how does that affect the way that you coach?
It means everything to me. And I know it's such a simple quote, and I wish I could take credit for it because it's so awesome. But I went to a lot of coaching clinics earlier on whenever I coach. I still like to go. I just feels like I don't have time to. But I went to one a few years ago that a coach, Chris Holtman, was speaking at. And at the time he was coaching Butler, he had just took over for Brad Stevens
Hmm.
at Butler, and he had just took over, and now he's the coach at Ohio State. But he was talking about the coaching profession, and in our profession, you're always looking for the next job. You're always looking for the next step. You're always looking. If you're an assistant coach, you want to be a head coach. If you're a head coach at a small school, you want to be a head coach at a big school. And it's always something, always looking for the next move. And he said that one thing that he tried to live by, and for me, it's my life. It's not just basketball; it's my life that I try to apply it. But he was talking about the basketball sense. Wherever you are, just make it better. Just make it better. Focus in where you're at, because if you can't make that situation better? What makes you think you're going to make those other ones better down the road? And that's such a big life lesson, because it could be in your professional life, it can be in your home life, it could be in anything that you do, anything that you touch, wherever you are, make it better. And so for me, I try to apply it in every facet of my life. If I see myself slip, or if I see something struggle because I got in the way, my selfishness, or something that I wanted to do got in the way, that's the quote that I look back on. Wherever I'm at, whatever's happening, just make it better. And if you do that, it's going to translate. And what happens for him, obviously, is that other opportunities are going to open up. You're going to be given those opportunities whenever you take those times to just be in the moment that you're in and make that moment the best that you can be.
And I think that that's really applicable to being an assistant coach, right? Where if you're an assistant coach, you're kind of thinking about your next role, your next opportunity, whatever. If you want to be a head coach, trying to think about what's out there, and you might mentally have one foot in the door, but you got to focus on taking care of the task at hand, and what you're actually being paid to do, and actually make sure you're accomplishing that job wherever it is that you're currently at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I may say this a lot because you
Mm-hmm.
hear it a lot, and it's something I hear a lot. I can't stand it, but people say, "I just an assistant," just an assistant, just an assistant, and that is so. We do not give assistant coaches enough credit. And I'm not saying that just because I am one, but whenever you watch the college game, the pro game, whatever, everything at the highest level, your assistant coaches is what makes that team run. And good head coaches will acknowledge that. Good head coaches will delegate the right way. Good head coaches will, you'll see assistant coaches go on to be a good head coach. But the thing about assistant coaches is, you can't be looking for that next step whenever you've got a task at hand.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing your team a disservice. And so that quote is one that I've hung on to in my profession. And I'm not going to lie, I've been offered jobs. There's been jobs open up, and people want me to take them. And for me, it's about being in the right place at the right time. And I'm at a great place right now. And so for me, and in my life and where I'm at right now, and things can change and happen
Mm-hmm.
differently tomorrow. But every year I'll look at it and I'm like, here I go again. Here I go again. It's my 20th year coaching. And I've done head coaching in middle school, and I actually did take a head coaching job at one point for a girls basketball team, high school basketball team, for a summer. But then things opened up, and I actually got a teaching role at the school that I was at before. So I went back to that school.
Yeah.
But whenever you are given those opportunities, you just do the best that you can. And with the assistant role, a lot of people put that on there. Well, I'm just an assistant, or he's just an assistant, or she's just an assistant. And they are so vital to programs. And so that's why I was so excited to be able to come on the show today and talk about it.
Well, let's jump into your role, and in fact your multiple roles that you have in assistant. So let's start with, what are those? So what are the multiple roles that you have, or the responsibilities that you've been given as an assistant to do?
Oh gosh. Well, it starts out like for us, in May, as soon as school ends, we have tryouts. And that's a big deal. And
Yeah.
that's something that I'm right there. My main role, of course, is the assistant head coach and everything that he does. But that is a big deal. Tryouts. We're in a small rural town, so everybody knows everybody. And the head coach grew up here. Head coach, played at that school. He's successful in college, and knows a lot of people. And so sometimes he's like, oh, that's so-and-so kid, that's so-and-so kid, or whatever. Or we have colleagues who have kids trying out, and it's like, oh my goodness, so that's a big deal, because our big thing is that we want to be honest, upfront. We don't want to mislead. We want to be fair. We want people to make the team that deserve to be on the team. We don't want to snub somebody. It don't matter who they are, how much money they have, where they're from. We've cut kids from people that work with us, and that can, create some tense moments at work. But tryouts is a big deal, because you're putting together your team. And so that's
Yeah.
a big thing. And we get together, and our coach, it's funny if you see us, because like I said, I'm kind of undersized. I'm only 5'9", and Coach is about 6'5", so we look pretty funny on the bench. And but if you see us, out there in tryouts, it's funny too because Coach has a huge heart, and so there's times that I may have to take the lead and cutting somebody, and he has to, and because that's the worst day of the year. It's so
Oh yeah,
bad.
it's terrible.
Kids are wanting to play, and people don't understand that. We would love for everybody to play, but it's also not junior pro, and so we have to
Hmm.
do it. And so for him and I, we work together, and we start planning that way before tryouts. Obviously, I mean, you know how all that goes, and
Sure.
getting things put together, and then tryouts happen, and just the strategies behind it, and the discussions and some heated discussions. So tryouts is a big thing, a big role of mine. That starting out the season is putting together that team and helping put together that team for the upcoming year. And then soon after that, you're getting into camps, so you get to a taste of what that team's going to be like, start working on that chemistry, which is so huge on a team. It make and break you, and so that chemistry and starting that step-by-step progression and seeing what lineups work best, what kind of offense will be good to run this year with this team, and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of discussions through camps and all summer long, even though when it's dead period, him and I are on the phone. He's got a farm, so he's on the tractor, talking my ear off, and I'm doing whatever. And so we're talking back and forth and planning that upcoming season, and so planning practices, doing workouts. We not developed, but we stole, I guess you could say, and had a new offense for the team we had this past year because we were so small and quick. We ran a Princeton style offense, and so learning it and learning the ins and outs of it, him and I did that, and so that's a role. Any kind of big change, because
That
good
sounds like a big
coaching.
one.
Yeah, that one's a big one. Good coaching isn't, trying to get your players to play your game. It's being able to coach the team and coach the team of the strengths that they have. And if it's a game that you're not comfortable with, you better get comfortable with it, because that is something, if you can adapt to your team, not your values, not your fundamentals, not that kind of stuff. I'm talking about how they play.
Hmm.
You're not going to play a slowed up game with a big man if your biggest guy is 6'2". You're going to play spread out, shoot the ball. And so finding that style and figuring that out for each year, that's something that the head coach and I have a lot of conversations about and do. Player development is probably my most important job. Player development, not just the skill set, but your mental state, your well being, going from being a small young freshman boy to a senior young man, and those conversations that you have multiple times, and that's usually the head coach and I are both in those conversations, talking to those players frequently about where they're at. The worst thing you can allow a player to do is wonder where they're at and why they're not playing. And so we have several conversations about that with those players. And then all of the things about running a team, fundraisers, radio and newspaper interviews when the coach isn't available, making sure that you're representing the team in the right way and bragging on your players, and make sure that their parents and grandparents get to hear their name on the radio and newspapers, and just building that reputation in the community, scheduling, game planning, and just everyday coaching. So there's so many roles as an assistant coach that you have to help the head coach.
And how many of these roles that and positions that you filled are ones that took time, because you are in a situation that is pretty unique and that you've worked with the same head coach for so long. So is it like a slow like build up process, or were you kind of handling all these roles like almost from the beginning or right away?
It was both. There was a
Hmm.
lot right at the beginning because he came in 9 games into the season that first year, and so he was like, okay, what plays do we have? And we, of course, we kept some, scrapped some. I was very hands on right away, and the situation helped that. And so he got to see me in action really fast, and our viewpoints just mirrored so well. And that's not going to happen everywhere you go as an assistant. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I've had other roles like coaching a JV team. I coach a JV team every year up until this last year. We brought on a player that played for us a couple years ago, in as another assistant. He wants to
Mhm.
be a college coach one day, and so we're mentoring him. And this past year, I gave him the JV team. I said, I want you to coach them and let Coach and I sit back and mentor you actually coaching a team, because that's so fun to do. And
Yeah.
sometimes you need to step back. And this is a kid that I coached for 4 years, and I'm getting to see him tell kids things that I'm like, okay, that sounds familiar, because it's what Coach and I had said to him. So
Mhm.
it's just building that program. And the head coach too has had to miss at times. I've had to step in as head coach. I've had to coach certain games during COVID. Oh my goodness!
Oh boy,
I mean,
yeah.
it was just whoever could be there was there, and so I had to coach some games during COVID. This past year, I had to coach one, and at the time, the team was 11-0. We were on a really good run at the beginning of the year, and I'm like, "This is the one we better not drop," because I was
Mhm.
coaching it. But so stepping in as head coach, being able to flip that switch whenever you need to, knowing that an assistant coach is a different role than a head coach, that's very, very important. And so, like you said, uh, it was a progression over time with the trust, but the situation that we were in, I had to be immersed in it pretty quick. So for me, even though it has been a progression, it was pretty quick at the beginning, and then it's just been more and more since then.
Yeah, especially if, like you said, you were kind of in a position where you were doing the one trying to get the head coach up to speed at the very beginning because of the
Yes,
situation that he kind of just jumped in, he had to jump right in, right? You were the one with
absolutely.
all the knowledge, so to speak. That's funny. Yeah. Um, so with so many different things that you are doing, and so many responsibilities that you're given, along with the fact that, obviously you're working very closely with your head coach as well. What is the definition of success in those roles? Like, how do you kind of define whether or not you're doing these roles successfully? Is there a criteria that, you and the head coach have worked out? Do you have kind of your own criteria, or how do you kind of determine and define what success means?
Well, we'll tell you, and those listening, that I am very blessed with the head coach that I have, and we trust each other with everything that we have at this point because of the time that we have spent,
Hmm.
and the trust that we have. We're able to lean into each other with everything, and it's not his team; it's our team, and so that empowers you as an assistant coach. And so, for me, uh, the way I try to define the success by the outcome. And the outcome's not always about a win or a loss on the scoreboard. It's, did we win the day? Are we better today than we were yesterday?
Mm.
Uh, it could be in practice, it could be in a game, it could be in a workout, it could be whatever. And it could be, maybe the head coach. Maybe it's a conversation that I had to have with him. Did I make the head coach better today? Because that's a main goal of mine, is making him look the best, be the best, as his assistant. And it could be a certain player or players. It could be the whole team. Uh, you know, the coach would be probably the one to define success if the head coach, if he's like, hey, coach, please, we need a game plan for this opponent. And then that
Hmm.
game plan either flops or it succeeds, then yeah, he's going to be the one that says, hey, this is that was good, that was bad, whatever. But for me, it's always reflection. If it's driving home that day or right before bed, looking back on that day and think, uh, did I challenge my head coach when he needed to be challenged? Because
That
that
could
can
be
be a
hard to
scary
do.
thing.
Yeah,
That that's
that could
that's
be hard.
that's so hard. And there's sometimes, and now having another assistant coach in the room, and a young one, sometimes there's not being much being said, and it falls on me to be that devil's advocate, so to speak, or stand up for a player and be like, no, I think that he's just fine. This is what he's struggling, and it could be in anything. But those talks are always behind closed doors. Those talks are
Hmm.
all and that could be a very important conversation, because when you come out, you're unified and you feel better. But did I challenge that head coach when he needed to be challenged? Did I neutralize the situation whenever he is jumping on a player? Did I neutralize it by coming in behind and being like, okay, did you understand what he meant by this? This is what you need to be doing. Because whenever you're getting, your butt chewed, a lot of times you're not thinking about anything but I want this guy to stop yelling at me.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then you have to come in and you have to neutralize that. And did we get better today because of my actions, or was I in the way of that? That's what I define success in as an assistant coach in my role is, did we get better today because of what I did, or was I in the way of that? Did I try to do too much? Did I disagree with the coach too much? Did I try to make it mine too much? There's such a fine line there. So making sure that it's not about me, it's about the team, and did I make the team better today?
And I think with that, there is going to be a lot of times where you reflect and you think, oh, maybe I could have done that better. I should have done that better. I think you really only know and really can learn from, trial and error in a lot of ways. And I think that you kind of, as an assistant, you kind of have to allow yourself to kind of take those risks, or step in, and maybe you'll reflect on it and learn that maybe I shouldn't have that time, but it's still good that you did, because then you kind of still learn from that experience. I think you have to be a bit of a risk taker and be willing to kind of put yourself out there to truly grow in an assistant position.
You do. Absolutely. That's 100% correct. But you have to own your mistakes. If you do make one and you're like, oh man, that was horrible. And if it's to the coach, it may be to the coach, maybe to a player, maybe to the other assistant, whatever, is owning those mistakes. Because if they see that, they see that you take ownership, then when you're right, they know that they better get behind you. Because then they better be held to the fire. You're going to hold them accountable because you're holding yourself accountable.
Sure.
And that's a huge message.
And I think with that, it probably gives a lot of trust from the head coach to know, like, hey, like, that this guy or this girl is going to make mistakes, and they're going to not just necessarily admit that they made a mistake, but also be able to explain what they learned from that mistake, and kind of show like, oh, okay, this person is learning and is growing, and so I have confidence that they're not going to maybe go about that situation the same way the next time it comes up, because they learned something from it, and they're going to be the better for it.
Yeah, and fix it. I mean, that's what we do. We got to fix it. We got to correct it.
Yeah. And so one of the things I find that's always been a bit of a balancing act with assistant coaches in particular is a couple things regarding communication. And I think one is with parents, and I'll start there. And the idea of, if you're an assistant coach and you're communicating with parents and you're having conversations with parents, there's kind of the balancing act of you talking as a coach about these parents, but also you as somebody who is representing the program and is speaking in line with the head coach's vision. So what is kind of the key of kind of being your own coach and having a conversation with parents, while at the same time knowing that you ultimately are carrying out the vision of the head coach, and that might be what the parent may be upset about.
This is a fun one right here. Communication is so valuable in everything we do. We know that, and coaching is no different. Communication from coach to coach, coach to player, watching and observing the communication from player to player, vocal or non-vocal communication. Body language is huge in our program. We make sure, when you're coming off the floor, the body language that you're representing. So we watch everything, and some of that is, the things that we hear or see from the crowd and parents. And for us, one thing that we have committed to from day one is that we handle the communication with the parents together. Obviously, the coach does get some calls that he will have to handle on his own, but he always tells me about those conversations. I will not field a phone call from a parent. I will not, unless it's something, maybe if I'm the acting head coach at the time and it needs to happen, or if it's, just like an information, like maybe there's a team dinner or, something very innocent.
Yeah.
But I will not field a phone call without the head coach talking with me. I will not do that. It's something that I've kind of set at the very beginning. The first couple of years, there were parents that tried to text me I don't look at text messaging as communication. We will talk in person. We will not text if it's about your kid and about the playing time. Now, like I said, if it's something innocent, team dinner, something like that, yeah, sure, that's fine. But when it's talking about your kid, that's important. And it's important to you as a parent. We understand that. It's important to us as a coach. And so it will be in person. And and it's with the staff, and it will be with the staff. You're not going to pit one against the other. So that's something that we do as a coaching staff, and stay very on the same line, streamlined, so that way everything's on the same page. You know, for me, I've been known to not speak to parents very much, not on purpose or anything, but games and stuff like that, you're pretty dialed in, and so I don't. Some people have made fun of me about that, and be like, well, you don't even talk to parents, but no, I do. But it's I'm there to coach the kids. I'm there for the kids. We've had parents that when their kid leaves the program, they don't like us, but the kid loves us. And so it's building that respect, and it goes back to those conversations that you have with those kids throughout the 4 years they're there, and they're that they're with you, and they know what goes in and day out. So as far as the parents are concerned, that's something we do as a group. And we do let them come in if they have concerns and talk. Some coaches don't let that happen. We see a lot of value in that. That's their son. We coach boys, so that's their son out there. They have a right to come in and ask about their. We should be on the same team with that. We're both looking out for their well-being, so we need to talk. And the mamas do need to vent their concern and let them talk about their baby for a little bit. But we let them do that. We let them get it off their chest. We tell them where we stand, and we tell them about the conversations we have with those kids, and then we move on. And it may be in different directions. They may still not agree with us, but you know, they have to respect where we come from with it, and we try to make it the best we can in that situation, because we are both looking out for the well-being of that kid, and so that's what we try to do.
And is that going to be the same thing when it comes to communication with players who have concerns, I mean, well, that obviously has to be a little bit different, but I'm talking about, I guess, if players have, concerns about like playing time or general frustrations with things of the program in general, do you kind of have that same approach, or are things a little bit different because it's talking with a player directly?
Oh, they can open our door and close the door behind them anytime they want to. We want to know where their head's at, and if they have a concern, or if they don't agree with something, we're going to tell them where we're coming from, and that's very valuable, very valuable. If you have a kid going home and them not knowing, now they may tell their parents they don't know why they're playing, but our kids will know why they're not on the floor. I mean,
Okay.
they will know. I think that's so valuable in a program, for team chemistry. They need to know what they need to work on. They need to know what they need to get better at. They need to know why we don't trust them in a late game situation. They need to know why they are now in a late game situation. Why we do trust them now in that. So it's good and bad, but all of that, the communication in anything, but especially coaching, is so imperative to the success that you have. And so to have good success, you've got to talk to them. And so anytime they have concerns, they know that they can come in. Now, do they always? No. Sometimes we see it weighing in on them. We'll have to bring them in and try to really get it out of them. And what's going on, what's happening. But they know that they're more than welcome to at any time.
Yeah, that's good, and I'm sure that makes players, they have to feel comfortable knowing that like that policy, kind of that open door policy, is kind of in place, so
Yes.
it doesn't let things brood or fester at all. They can have that conversation and not have to keep it in and blow up at an opportune time.
Right. And it also helps not having repetitive conversations too, about the same thing. They know, we've already told you, you know what you need to work on. So it's not that we have those same conversations every day or anything like that. It's just, it's good to have, like you said.
All right, there's the big question I know a lot of people who are assistants are always worried about, which is, trying to establish themselves as an assistant coach, especially those who might be just starting out or who are just new, who are trying to establish themselves and kind of get themselves out there in the coaching world, while at the same time they're not trying to step on the head coach's toes or try and do more than maybe they're capable of, or more than they're asked to. So what advice would you give to maybe a new or young assistant? I mean, you have one right now, so you can probably speak to it in that sense, who's trying to figure out how to find their own voice while at the same time not overstepping their bounds.
Absolutely. My advice, and I've got a couple points because I've worked for several different coaches, and I can speak to, I've been talking a lot about the one I'm with now and how blessed I am, but I've had the other end of it too. And so my advice would be to do your research and have several conversations with the head coach before you go work with him. Know the expectations, know what the values of that head coach is, and make sure that it matches up with yours, or at least close to yours. Don't just be taking the job to be taking it. A bad coaching job is worse than not having one at all. And a lot of people will disagree with that, but it can damage your coaching reputation. It will not reflect your abilities or your values, and it will be hard to get into a good program. And so do that research before you start going into it. Don't just be like, oh, I can jump in on this. Know what you're getting into. I've had an experience with a head coach that did not set clear expectations. They created a very hard coaching experience for me because I didn't know when to step in, what to do to help. I was just standing there in practice. There was no guidelines set, and the players pick up on that, and it damages a team. It's easy to try to pit coaches against each other when that happens, whenever no clear expectations are set. I've had experience with head coaches that feel threatened by a strong assistant or even any assistant whatsoever. They're very paranoid. They're afraid to tell you things because they're afraid that you're going to take their job. And it won't matter what you do in this situation because they won't trust you. They won't tell you things. You can't do your job effectively. They're going to hold things from you. It's very frustrating. It damages the team's chemistry. And that's just not a good situation that you want to be in either. But I can't say enough about when you have somebody that mirrors close to what your values are. And in my situation, it's right on, is that when you are able to have a head coach that lays down those expectations, they want to be challenged. They want to make it our team and not his or her team. That's the best situation. And then you're not always going to find everything so great like that, but try to get it as close to that as possible, especially if you're starting out, because you need guidance, you need help, you need to be allowed to mess up a few times, but then guided, this is what you do to get better. And because you're going to be intense talks, there should be, if everyone cares about the team, there will be some intense talks that are behind those closed doors. And it's behind those closed doors. It's not in front of the players. It's not in front of the fans. It's not in front of everybody out there. It's behind those closed doors. And then when that coach and staff walks out, they're unified. Even if it's not my idea, if it's the other assistant, if it's the head coach, we come out unified. Even if I'm the one that got voted down, I come out and I'm unified in that. And so that's what I would say. And I guess my thing that I would say starting out, be the assistant coach that you would want to have.
Yeah. And you really think about what type of coach you want to have on your staff too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's what I try to do is I'm like, okay, if I'm the head coach, what kind of assistant coach? I want one that's loyal. I want one that's honest. I want one that's going to challenge me. That's going to make me look good. That's going to make me the best that I can be. Be that person for that head coach. Be that person. And it'll come back to you. It'll come back to you if you do that.
Yeah, and that was something I was going to ask and follow up with, but you just kind of talked about it, like for you personally, how you kind of deal with situations where you are very confident that what you want to do is correct or is the right way about doing something, but you're not getting your way, or the coach wants to go in another direction. Like for you, how do you kind of emotionally or mentally kind of set yourself right so that you and the whole coaching staff are still that unified front?
You got to put the team before yourself,
Hmm.
and there's things that I know that I'm right, and we're walking out of there doing something different, and that doesn't work. And we come back to it, and my thing was the thing that was better. But you can't have that much pride. You can be confident, but
Hmm.
don't have that much pride that, you've got to compromise. It's like any other relationship, really. You have to compromise and take and give, and you know and my head coach, I'm blessed, like I said, because he'll come in there and be like, you're right, I'm wrong, and he'll admit that, and he's the one that leads that in our staff. And I've had head coaches where they'll come in and they'll be ticked off. Well, you told them that this is what we needed to do, and they didn't do it, and they won't say that they're wrong. Everything they do is right. And that's a hard situation. So that's why I tell, young coaches, don't just jump into it to be jumping into it. I was there. I know what that's like. I know that feeling, but research it, know what you're getting into, and try to have a head coach that's going to guide you the right way.
And it's a bit of a it is tougher, I think, than it may seem, to have to almost, like, for a lack of a better term, right, like swallow your pride on something that you're really confident in, because as you mentioned, I mean, the players are going to know if there's like dissension between you and the coach, and if they feel they can
Yes,
exploit that or pick up on that or pit one against the other, oh, that they'll know. They'll jump right on that. And to have to, just
a
kind
hundred
of,
percent.
you got it. I mean, but and I think that you have to, it really, like I said, kind of swallow your pride at some point, and again, put the team above you, and that's easier said than done, I think, sometimes, especially on those things you're
It is.
100% confident about, right?
That's
Uh,
right.
But
That's right.
and so, what are, I'll ask, this is something I've always kind of been a little bit curious about. What is your role? And how do you stay active and engaged, like, during practices? Is your role kind of the same of what's expected to you? Does it change? Do you help run practices? Like, what responsibilities are given to you in that sense?
Yeah, practices are a partnership. So, we'll take turns doing drills or whatever. And as it's going on, as you're constructing, instructing, whatever you want to call it, as the drills are going, or if we're running our offense or whatever happening, um, you know, our head coach is fully aware of, and I can see it too whenever I get going. It Players can get numb if one person is talking all the time. They can get numb to what is being said. And so being able to, maybe today is the day that I'm going to be the one that's jumping on your tail. Tomorrow may be the day that the other assistant's doing it. Then the other day, the head coach is doing it. And so we do share that responsibility. And sometimes it's easy as the assistants, both of us, to kind of sit back. That head coach has took that leadership role, and he's out there, and sometimes he'll come over and be like, okay, guys, I've talked too much. They're not responding. I need you guys right now. And then
Hmm.
we'll take the leadership role at that point. So it's kind of a touch and feel a lot of times, but we do partner. Our Everything's partnered in our practices. So as far as our roles, it's something different every day. It's we share those roles. We um, it could be where, I lead practice and the head coach is just sitting over there and will only say things to players as he's picking them out. It can be a lot different, especially as you get into late in the year, because practices seem very redundant and boring. So to mix it up a little bit and to keep them on their toes, we'll do things like that sometimes. So it's a very shared role and mixed role, and you do a little bit of everything. So it's not like just one thing, or you're only have a little list. It's everything that goes on in practice.
And I think that kind of helps, I imagine, with the players to really respond to you and the things that you're saying, because they know that there's going to be times when you're kind of running practice or kind of taking control of things. And I think it's important for players to know that, like, what you say and what you're directing and what you're coaching is just as important. It needs to be listened to just as much as anyone else.
Yes, and you have to make that point, and
Hmm.
that's a switch that I had to learn how to flip. If the head coach is over there or he's goofing off, not really goofing off, that's a bad term, but if he had to go over to the side or on the phone, or administration comes in, and then you have to take it over, and there's a distraction, and they're looking at the distraction more than they're looking at you. And this is just an example.
Mhm.
Is getting them right with you, and be like, look, don't look at that. You look at me right now. I'm the one talking. You got to demand that. You got to flip that switch. You are at that moment the head coach. You have taken over, and so that's something I had to learn pretty quick, because they didn't need to know that Coach Kennard is here, so we get to have a fun practice. No, it'll be fun, but there's going to be a lot of work involved, and you're going to be held accountable, and you're probably going to do a little bit more conditioning than you do with the head coach here, just because I'm going to keep you honest. So it's a switch you got to flip. They got to understand that at that moment you are head coach, and they have to treat it like that.
Yeah. And what are your responsibilities in game situations?
In game situations,
Yep.
there's a lot of play calling this past year. It was a lot of play calling because of our new offense, inbound plays. The coach is it's such a different role. Oh my goodness, because I've had to juggle both before. Where head coaches, you're in that specific moment. Where assistant coaches, you're on the bench. You get to take that step back, so you get to see 2 to 3 plays ahead that's about to come, and so being able to call the right play, being able to switch something up, switch a defense up. I'm all the time saying, "Hey, let's go to this. Let's do this. Let's do this." This year we had a very fast team, and I don't know how many times from the bench I was like, "Okay, let's do the press. Let's stick the press. Let's stick the press." Because we'd be falling behind, or I wanted to speed the game up, and that was another thing. You had to swallow your pride, right? And so it would be a quarter late or something, and he'd be like, "Man, we should have jumped in that press a quarter early." Yeah, well, that's what I was saying on the sideline. But it my role is to try to see that coming. Am I always right? Absolutely not. And so trying to see the bigger picture where he can be in the moment and coaching what's right in front of him, not having to worry about those other things. And so that's my role during the game. Especially that really amplifies and gets a lot bigger if it's a
Hmm.
very close game down the stretch, of okay, this is a 3 possession game with 30 seconds, get out on the perimeter, only allow it to a contested 2. Don't even allow to get that 3 point shot up. Let's keep this a 3 possession game, whatever. Little bitty things like that down the stretch to just make sure that you steal the win, make the right decisions, have the right play call if you have something at the buzzer that you got to score on. Things like that, just to help the head coach to where he's not trying to do too much, and he's got the moment in front of him. He can actually coach that moment.
Yeah, and that puts a lot of expectations and a lot, I don't say pressure, but it does put a lot of responsibility on you as an assistant to kind of almost be the guy or be the girl who kind of maybe is noticing the things that like others aren't noticing, or paying attention to things that might not be seen, because
Yes.
like the more obvious things that are happening, right? Like everybody kind of sees that, and hopefully everybody knows what's
Hmm.
happening. But you're kind of have maybe a different perspective on something, on maybe what a player's doing, or like a small matchup situation, or a small wrinkle to
Yes.
put in there, and you got to almost see the game in a different way, or be able to pick out maybe something that others wouldn't notice, and you really got to have a nice like critical eye for that. And I think that that's a really
You
big
do.
art to have. um
And you said matchups. Subbing is a big thing, and
mhm.
there's sometimes he turns. The head coach turns around. He just can't do it. He's like, "Guys, I need you to sub for me right now. I can't do it." And he's so caught up that we have to make sure that we're putting in the right guys. And so it is, and there is a lot of pressure on it. And your mistakes get uh, pretty big and amplified, especially if it's down the stretch.
And I think something that I've mentioned this before, and I'm sure you could speak to this too, and it's just so important. That's why I've brought it up multiple times, is that you have to, as an assistant coach, you better know that offense and defense kind of inside and out, when you need to pull that guy who gets subbed out and explain to them what to do, or what they
Yes.
maybe didn't do, and that they fix the next time, because as a head coach, you have to be expecting that, hey, if I go and I sit him down next to my assistant coach, that my assistant coach is going to be able to clearly explain what this player did wrong or what they need to do or what's needed from them, and I can put them back out there in a couple minutes and they won't make that mistake again.
Absolutely. And, we're also blessed to have another assistant coach, and he's a lot closer to their age. And
Oh, that's
so
nice.
if,
Yeah.
sometimes at that point, you can stick him on him, and he's got a wealth of knowledge as well. And that trust that coach has in me and him to be able to do that is not even questioned. And so it goes back to what I said, be that assistant coach that you would want to have, be that guy that, the head coach can turn around and be like, "Hey, I need you to get him," and talk to him. And so, yeah, you're so right. It's so imperative, and and we're blessed to have all the right tools. Having a young assistant coach who can relate to them a little bit better. Having a coach and I have been together for a long time, so we have a lot of good chemistry as coaches. So they get to see a unified effort.
Yeah, that's always nice when it works out when you're able to have a coach who's closer to their age. It's kind of like almost like high risk, high reward type situation I found, where sometimes it can
Yes.
be great and sometimes I've seen it go a lot of ways. So I'm glad you're in a positive situation with that. No, that's funny.
Yes, sir.
Before I hit our concluding segment, I'm gonna ask you a left field question here because I've been
Okay.
dying to ask this since the beginning. This is kind of silly though, but as somebody who teaches economics and government, I want to ask, how in the world do you balance coaching with also teaching AP US? Because I don't understand how I know what that course load's like. I know what that's like. How does that work? How do you
Yes.
balance the both of those?
That's tough, man. That's tough. I love it. I love it. I love teaching. And, I told you it took me a while to get to where I was teaching and coaching. And so I know what it's like to be in that retail world. I know what it's like to be doing something I don't want to be doing. And so the time that I put in the summers, the APSIs, the summer institutes that I went to and learned strategies, stealing strategies,
Mhm.
whatever I could do. Uh, I just love what I do, man. That's what it is. It comes down to my passion. There's nothing I would rather do than teach AP US all day long and then go to the gym and coach basketball at the very end of the day. And it's a full load, and it can be overwhelming many times, especially like right now as we're getting ready for the AP US history test that will be in
Mhm.
May. I'm telling you, man, it's such a hard test. It's such a hard class, but I love the challenge, and I love talking about history. I love talking about the goods, the bads, the uglies, uh, teaching the facts, letting the kids decide on their own what they think, and seeing their minds work. And so uh, it comes down to passion and just the love for it. Because if you don't have it, something will suffer because there's so much work to be done.
Well, the possibility's been floated out there for me sometime in the future of teaching AP Gov or AP Econ. So
There you go,
if I
man.
ever get around to that life, I'm gonna have to contact you on how to make that happen because that's
Absolutely.
that's a whole nother level. That's a whole nother level role. I think that'd be more stress doing that than coaching itself. But no, that's great. That's awesome. To wrap up, Coach, there's a couple guests or a couple questions I ask every guest. I'll go ahead and start with this first one, which is thinking back on your coaching career. What is a
Mhm.
coaching moment from your career that you think others listening would be able to learn from?
Oh gosh. I guess for me, one of the games that I had to coach myself, I we actually were playing a really good team, a team that went all the way to the Final Four that year, and we weren't as good that year. And it was during COVID, and we played them tough until that third middle of the third quarter, fourth quarter, and they started running away with it and got up 20-25. And
Hmm.
you get to the end of the game like that, you try to get everybody in. And with the head coach not being there and me running it, I was like, let's get everybody in. Let's get everybody in. I forgot a guy, and get into the locker room, and my eyes meet his, and I realized I forgot this kid. I didn't get him in the game. Are you kidding me? And so, with insult to injury, at that point, it was owning my mistake. It was, hey, and I call him by his name. I'm so sorry. That was not intentional. Uh, I missed you. That's my fault. I will talk to your parents. I will let them know nothing's going on. I'll make it right with them. I understand they're going to be upset. I will talk to them. I'm sorry. That was not intentional. Owning a mistake, if it's intentional, if it's not, whatever you do, if it's a mistake and taking that ownership of it, that goes such a long way. And I did. I talked to the parents. I talked to, of course, the kid in the locker room. So the next day we were able to move on and everything was fine. Some other things too. You have kids will do crazy things at times. We've had some crazy moments, kids doing things and getting in trouble.
Hmm.
Sometimes, in the heat of that, the head coach is very irresponsible. It can get very intense. And so being able to take a kid to a side and guide a player to do the right thing. Don't expect them to do the right thing if you don't guide them to do the right thing first. And assistants are big in that role, because sometimes if you see that interaction between the player and the coach don't see it because he's jumping that kid's tail. He's saying, you got to do this, you got to get this done. You got to make this right. That kid may not know how to make it right. Being an assistant and seeing, okay, this kid has no idea what this coach is talking about, and not bringing it up right there, but bringing them onto the side and saying, hey, this is how you handle this.
Yeah.
You need to go do this. You need to go do that. And then it's in their court, and 9 times out of 10, if that kid wants to do the right thing, and we've been blessed with great kids, they'll do it. And only positive things will happen from that. And also expect the unexpected, because whenever
Yeah.
I was having to do the head coaching role, that's whenever parents will try to hit you. They will try to hit you at the worst time. They will try to talk to you about playing time or whatever. Even whenever they weren't playing with the head coach before, it's like, what's going on?
Hmm.
Don't get caught up in that. Don't get caught up in and letting parents think that they can confide in you about something that they don't agree with the head coach in. And my big thing that I try, and this is one of my quotes, I will take responsibility for this one, because it came to me one time when I was trying to figure out how to balance being an assistant coach and how to share and this is whenever I was younger, but how to share the glory, and how to balance it all.
Yeah.
And this quote, it goes like this: it's true leadership is stepping up and being noticed in the bad times, but stepping back and letting others be noticed in the good times. If you can do
Ooh, I
that,
like that.
if you can step up and be noticed in the bad times, whenever things aren't going well, if the kids are in there and you start railroading their tail because things are bad, and this is how you're going to get it right, this was wrong, we were wrong, we've got to fix this, and they know that you're stepping up, they know that you care about them because you're doing it in that bad time, but they also see that you're not taking all that glory and you're talking to the papers after the game. You're letting them do it whenever it's the good stuff. You're letting them be rewarded for it. I'm 42 years old. I don't need any kind of glorification. Those kids need that reinforcement. They need that confidence. They need that step back and enjoy. You'll be blown away how much you will enjoy seeing those kids, seeing the other coaches, see them enjoy themselves and get that praise in the good times. And so that's one thing that I try to do, that I've learned from, is owning those mistakes, guide those players to do the right thing, know that there are going to be people that are going to be ruthless out there. So do it right. If you're going to do it right.
Man, that's I always like to end on this 60-second soapbox, coach, but I think you just crushed it right there. I mean that is wow, that is really good. What was that quote one more time? What was that quote?
True leadership is stepping up and being noticed in the bad times, but stepping back and letting others be noticed in the good times.
Man, I think I need to get that like on a poster somewhere or put that somewhere, frame that. That's really good. No, that's awesome. And wow. I think I'm just gonna leave it there. That is, I'm gonna do some reflection at the end of this, coach. That was great. I
I would
appreciate.
like to add one
Yeah,
more
go
thing,
for it.
if you
Yeah,
don't
no, no, go
care.
right ahead.
Having a platform like this, I just do want to applaud all the assistant coaches, because you are never just an assistant coach. You are a coach. Whenever you give your title, say coach. Don't say just assistant coach. Don't undersell what you do. Sometimes the team goes as the assistants go. And who cares? Because who cares who gets the credit? It should be about the team. And, there are many good coaches out there today, but there are many that are in it for themselves. And whenever you're trying to figure out who to work for, look at the players. Whenever you see that the players stay in touch with their coach even after they're done playing, then those coaches build relationships with those players and make it about the players. When you see the coaches that keep up with their win totals and tell the papers about it and make their own plaques and banners, then that they're in it for themselves. Be a coach that makes it about the players, build relationships, hold people accountable for when it gets hard, and not just whenever it gets hard, but when bad things happen, because by that time it's too late. Don't wait for those things to happen to hold them accountable. Hold them accountable before it gets bad. Be the coach that will step up and be noticed in the bad times, like I said, because they need a leader at that point, but then takes that back seat and let others be noticed in the good times. It's a thankless job, guys, many times, but coaching basketball gives us an opportunity to help boys become men, girls become women. And you know what? We can do that just as an assistant, as I said, not to say, because we are coaches. And so I love what I do. It's not about the title for me. It's about what I get to do every single day. And dude, I really appreciate you allowing me to be on your show.
Yeah, man. I think if there's one real small succinct nugget I can take out of this is for assistant coaches to get the word "just" out of your vocabulary when it comes to describing your title. Because no, you're right. I don't think any head coach can do their job anyway without having great assistants and great younger coaches, JV level and freshman level, and others who are there to support it. Because it really is, it's a whole program endeavor. It takes everyone, right?
Absolutely.
Coach, I want to thank you for coming on here talking about all the things that you do and as an assistant coach. Not just, I didn't say the word "just" on that. As an assistant coach, as a coach, and all the things that you're responsible for doing. And looks like you guys had a real successful season. You got a great thing going, and I think you guys are in for another great year next year. So best of luck going forward, and hopefully that AP test goes well too as well, Coach. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.